One.
Hola, audiencia, y bienvenidos a Oye Cinema Club. I am tonight's host, Jason Ishmael Eccles, and we are reviewing the 1963 Fellini masterwork, 8.5. I am joined by my illustrious panel of co-hosts, El Dundino, Marina, Watch, Laugh, Cry, and of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Steve Des TV. Maybe he's on a bus somewhere on some part of the world. So let's get right into our first thoughts on this film, our first reactions. If you guys don't mind, I'll just go ahead and leave. Well, let me first start off by saying why I picked this film. That's what we usually do. I picked this film because it's come up a few times in Cinema Club. I think maybe me, I think maybe El Professor, I think maybe even Michaela. We've all brought this to the table as a selection, as one of multiple movies we could pick, and it's never been picked, no matter who brings it up. So I said, you know what? One day I'm just going to pick this thing. I've never seen it. It's kind of like the quintessential Criterion movie. Wherever I go to look at Criterion movies, this is always like the first one that's plastered on there. I don't know. This might be the first movie that Criterion purchased. I'm not sure, but it's always like in every video store is the main one that's like right in front. It's always the poster. You know, every like website that talks about it's always this movie, this cover. So this is a Fellini film from 1963. It's black and white, and it's chaotic. I'm going to jump into my first thought now. It's a chaotic film. It's there's a lot going on, and in the first 5 or 6 minutes of this movie, I was really afraid because I knew it was surreal. I knew it was a sort of a surreal film, but that's all I knew. And I knew it was about a director because I had seen the musical 9 that came out, you know, a few years back, starring Daniel Day-Lewis and a slew of Hollywood actresses. And yeah, so I didn't know it was this closely linked. I didn't know it was like this was sort of like, you know, exactly like that movie, which it is. I mean, it's a reinterpretation 9, but this movie's interesting, man. There's a lot of good acting in it. There's a lot of good storytelling, but it's also very weird. In the first 10 minutes of this movie, it's so surreal. To be honest with you, it's a little off-putting because I'm like, what am I getting myself into? The movie's 2 hours. It can't be 2 hours of this. I don't know if I can do it. Now, I'll say this. This film is definitely a masterpiece by a master at work. But also, it was very hard for me to get through. Not that it was bad. It was just hard for me to like complete this thing. It took so long. I kept stopping and coming back to it. I think because the movie's very disjointed, like at least the first third of the movie is completely disjointed. And then you sort of see why as the movie carries on, you know, that a lot of this stuff is happening in his head and his visions and his dreams. And, you know, it's sort of like the inside look at a director as he's putting a movie together piece by piece and where the inspirations are coming from and how he's building everything. And we never quite see what he builds, you know. He's always sort of like in inspiration mode for the entire movie, which is sort of interesting. But ultimately, this is a story about a man and all the women in his life. His life, and how he deals with all these women and how he's juggling all these women from his wife till his mistress, till his mother, to the lead actress in his film, to, you know, extras, to women, hanger-ons, groupies, because he's also a celebrity. So yeah, there's a lot to dissect in this film. I gotta say, I did like it, and there's a lot to learn from it, but also, like I said, I'm just being honest, for me, it was really, really difficult to sit through. But in the movie, they talk about the director's style being every shot is like a postcard, which is really interesting because as I watched the movie, I'm like, every shot of this film is like a postcard. The cinematography is really beautiful. The lighting is really beautiful. The blocking is really amazing. It feels like it's before its time. And it kind of reminded me of that Inarritu film we watched earlier this year called Bardot. It really I was like, oh, this, huh?
That's what I wrote down because I was like,
great. I would love to hear your take on it.
Okay.
But yeah, it just kept reminding me of that film the whole time. I'm like, clearly, this is what Inarritu was inspired by. Yeah. So those were my first takes on the film. There's a lot of weird stuff in it, but yeah, I would love to hear you guys' take. Whoever wants to go next, please take it away.
I'll jump in just because you brought up Iñárritu, and people might be commenting like, how dare he said Iñárritu or you said Jason. So let me
Say it
jump in.
again.
Iñárritu.
I say
Iñárritu.
Inaratu.
Yeah.
Inaritu.
Almost like what's that the vampire the first vampire movie? What is
Nosferatu.
yeah. All
Inaritu.
Yeah, Iñárritu. All right. And I'm sure I'm overdoing it at this point. Great. So yeah, my first impression. I'm glad Jason brought that up. That it was tough because boy, maybe for multiple reasons. Like, don't get me wrong. He kind of like when we watched Le Samurai, and he was just so cool and slick. The main character, the director, is so cool, slick. I believe kids are calling it. He's got some drip going on,
Yep.
and I mean those sunglasses. I actually went online to look at like what sunglasses is he wearing, and Reddit is just like every single year someone's like, I'm gonna be that guy who asks what sunglasses is an 8.5. So yeah, beautiful cinematography. That's again where it's like 1964 and it's black and white. They were already doing color film, but it's Fellini and he does his thing and that's surreal. Like that's kind of his MO. And it's just like the way they're able to light and do stuff is at times much better than what they're doing now, especially
Yep.
with like CGI. And at the beginning, like just like he's flying, and that was also in Bardo. Although in Bardo, the character is like kind of flying on his own. In this one, he's kind of been taken, and then they like rope him, and I'm like, you can kind of see overlay on it, but it's still pretty cool looking. It's very cool looking, which isn't always the case in today's cinema of them trying to overly use CGI and all that stuff. So yeah, and then the music. Oh my God, the classical music being used and all that. But I will say I was struggling. I was watching it during siesta. It's really hot here, and I've been finishing a juice cleanse. So I was like, oh man, I'm tired. And there were a couple times where I like closed my eyes and I opened them, because they're yelling. It's Italian, so they're yelling a lot. And I'm like, well, I know I didn't miss anything because this is surreal. So I mean, it might make more sense if I actually missed a bunch of it. So it was a trip, man. It was a freaking trip, and I'm all for it. But it's it's a chore at times for sure. But you can see so many people have taken from him, right? They had
Mhm.
these long shots and just like blocking, like the amount of blocking with the amount of extras of being able to follow from one conversation to another, and like sometimes of being able to like you're trying to see like is there going to be a splice, right? Are they going to splice the one scene to another to kind of make, and I'm like there was maybe once or twice when I like kind of saw that it was maybe spliced, but other than that, it was just like really smart blocking. And I mean, they were playing with mirrors at one point, but yeah. And then I almost at the end I wanted to be like, okay, I need to research more about this movie. Cause,
Yep.
but then I'm like, no, I want to come on here and I want to talk about it, and maybe we can get the juices flowing, and we can maybe figure out what the hell this movie's about. So anyway, that's kind of my first impression. But it's a great first impression. There's a lot. There's a whole lot, and I was struck. I'm glad like I'm fluent in Spanish because I was kind of picking up the Italian. Because I'm trying to read as quickly as possible, and then I'm trying to look because the imagery is so beautiful, and there's like 20 conversations going on at once, and yeah, and that's part of what I think he's trying to do, which Iñárritu was also doing in Bardo, just like this overload, a sensory overload, basically. And
Yes.
yeah, all right.
Agreed.
So
Yeah, well, let's talk about that later. Let's go back to
yep.
the sensory overload question conversation later.
Yeah, for sure. Now, boom, boom, boom.
Um, First impressions, initial thoughts. I think my first thought was, "What the fudge?" Like, I was like, "What? What is this?" Like, I was questioning my appreciation of the arts for a second. So it's really great that you guys were aligned, you know. But yeah, and like you guys also said too, there are things to learn from it. It just took a second. Like I think Jason said the words a little ahead of its time, but I feel like get that for another way. Like I feel like this kind of movie would have done better with some of like the technology now. Like even though they did pretty good for what they probably had back then, it's just like some of the transitioning, like I like how some of the movies these days or TV shows like have different like lenses for different parts. Like if you watch Cruel Summer, it's a show. They do like 1993, 1994, 1995. It's like a yellow lens, a clear lens. You could tell like what's different. And I think the movie we did where he lost his memory. What was that movie?
Memento.
Memento.
Memento, they did a good job at that. So like it would have been nice, like because it kind of took me off guard. A couple of like the out of his mind fantasies. I was like, wait, what happened? Like the transitions weren't very smooth. So it was just like it was confusing on top of it. But it was also very interesting, like if very artsy. But it did take me a second. I had to probably rewind a couple times just to kind of be like, okay, what did I miss? Like, because I clearly missed something. But yeah, I already struggle with black and white, and I didn't even know it was gonna be foreign. So I was just sitting there like, Jason, I will find you and I will kill you. But I did find some cool things about it that we can get into when we talk more.
That's funny because when I was watching this thing in the first 5 or 6 minutes, I'm like, oh, Marina's going to be pissed. She is not going to be pleased with what's happening right now. Like, it's black and white, it's in Italian, and it's all over the place. And it's really bold, I think. Let's talk about the opening of the film. It's really bold, I think, to start a movie with a dream sequence, right? And we've seen that a billion times on movies and TV shows that we start our story in the character's dream and the dream is weird. But this is so bizarre and so weird, and we don't know that we're in a dream, and there's no way to tell we're in a dream. We just like we don't know what the filmmaker's like the story he's trying to tell. Now, after the first third of the movie, we realize, oh, okay, that's a dream. And then it all sort of makes sense. Like, yeah, that's why people are staring at him and he has this insecurity and he's dealing with all these things in his life, but in, abstract dream form. Do you guys want to talk about the opening a little bit?
Well, yeah, for sure. I was like, is there sound? I was like, it's 1964. I'm pretty sure there's sound. I'm like, is it gonna come out? Well, he made a choice of it black and white. I wonder if he's also gonna bring it in. But yeah, the one where I got that something was weird was the people like hanging out of the bus, right? Like they had like half their bodies. I was like, ooh, that's pretty weird. And then yeah, just like yeah, it was like I guess exhaust or smoke was going in, and everybody was kind of staring, kind of doing their own thing. So it was like definitely he's feeling claustrophobic or whatever, or
And he
everyone
has
on
to
him.
escape.
Yeah, and the only way to get out is up, right? Which could be death if he's flying up and all that. And that's something that later on, very much later on in the movie, basically at the end, kind of gets revisited, I think, but in a different form.
Yeah, right on.
I felt like it took again, I said I had to rewind a lot because without any context, I didn't even look up what the movie was about. I kind of just like jumped into it. So without any context, I thought it was going to be like some type of, maybe I've watched too many stuff like this, like magic, like he didn't know those people at the beach, like I thought they like dragged him out, and or I thought he died, and like this is like hell. Like I didn't know what was going on in the beginning because it made me feel like yeah, just I didn't get it without any context, without knowing right away that he's having these fantasies. It took me a second to realize that was what was going on. I thought it was like I'm going to be a magic type of movie.
Yeah, I went in kind of in the same vein as you. I didn't know at all what this story was about. I knew it was about a director, just because I saw the musical version, and I
Okay.
knew just from like one synopsis that it was a surreal movie. I was just hoping the whole movie wasn't the intro, because we might have had to cancel Cinema Club this week.
Why would you say that though? Like, is it because it was just so like it was like the silence or the
It was
scariness?
yeah, it was a little uncomfortable for me, because it was felt to me, it felt, if I saw this in the big cinema, it probably would have even felt more like a dream. You know, like how when you have that uncomfortable dream and your brain's trying to tell you something and you don't know where it's going, and you end up waking up like in the middle of the night thirsty, and you're like, what was that? And you're like, did I eat something bad that night? It was that confusing for me.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Um, let's talk a little bit. Excuse me. Let's talk a little bit about the characters in this thing, because there's so many, and we're not going to be able to get through all of them probably. But I want to jump right into the characters right away. We could start off with like the characters that you liked and identified with the most, but we should tackle some of these characters because I think they all kind of brought their own like sensibility to the story to help tell the story, because each one represents a section of his life.
Cool.
Anybody want to tackle that first, about the character you like the most or the character that maybe you identify with?
So, like the most, I'm gonna have to go with Guido. I didn't want to love him in a movie full of women, but um, just everything he held on his plate and everything. It was just a very like smooth operator kind of guy. Like he was going through what he was going through internally, but externally, like he just had a way with every move. And then I also loved the dynamic with his wife. Like I love that concept of like a woman who sees right through everything. Like I just love how she called him out. Everyone else is just like, "Oh, Guido," and she's like, "How can you lie so freaking much?" And I feel like as a woman, we've all been there. Like, you really think you're out here telling the truth, and like, just like I understood, what she was going through, like just based on like, thankfully, just boyfriends. Never got that serious, but boyfriend stuff. I really liked her character as well. There was so many. Some of them I didn't even really understand their impact until the end. Um, like obviously, yeah, I didn't even like really connect with the mistress like that. Like it was a lot going on with her, but I
Well,
definitely
after the fever dream, her with her fever and all that, I'm like, did she disappear? And then it wasn't until like I saw her fuzzy hat again that I was like, oh, that's her. But I struggled kind of. Again, I was reading and looking up. That at times I was like, oh wait, which woman it is? Now there's like three new women. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely agree on that. But my two favorite are Guido and his wife for sure.
okay,
Cool.
I'll go
So
real quick.
I like to. Oh no, go ahead, Dino, please.
Okay. Uh, so I was worried about saying Guido, right? But I'll say it because in that one sequence where all the women like get fed up, and then he pulls out a whip and he was like fighting back, like it's such a weird thing. But they call him out. They all call him out, and they all start teaming up, and they're like, "You're not a sympathetic person or character at all, basically." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm back on it." But again, he was just so cool and all that. And but just because we didn't explore too much, but clearly had such an impact on him was, I guess, the prostitute as a little kid. It's not sangria, but it's something sangrita, or I forget exactly what it is. That lives on the beach, I believe, in an old bunker. What it was that they kept going to, and they're like dance the Roomba, which I'm like, not much of a dancer. I don't think that's Roomba, but
Right.
uh,
That lady will
so
freak
I think her,
you.
because it because then it made so much sense earlier when he got his mistress, and he did like the funky makeup and like come out and like you're a prostitute or whatever, and I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. So she's definitely out there because it's one of those characters that we kind of found out the least about, but clearly had a big impact in him because she kept appearing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting take. Um, I feel like I realized it when I was watching it, but I didn't pay it that much attention. Like not enough to articulate it the way that you just did. I feel like I noticed it, and I was like, this is really interesting that him as a little boy basically hired a prostitute to do something for him. I don't think it was anything sexual or anything like that, but it might as well have been, right? Because he hired this woman, he gave her money to dance this dance, and they could watch her dance or whatever. I don't think like in his kid mind he actually hired a prostitute to do anything sexual for him. But I think that's kind of like the antithesis of what happened, right? I mean, I think that's pretty clear.
I mean, but it was all the kids. He had all the kids with him. It was all the students. They all wanted that show, and I mean, you know, and but I can definitely conceive as, yeah. I mean, older men, she's probably doing more than just dancing in front of them, I would imagine. So for her, this is kind of like the easy gig. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's also impactful enough because even if there wasn't anything sexually done to him as a child to impact his relationships with women, being able to purchase a woman at such a young age probably had a mental impact on him too. Like just feeling like all these women should listen to me kind of concept.
And look who he was reprimanded by right after.
Yeah, the priest and stuff. All right, so I don't know. Just to put it out, maybe we don't do right now because this is your thing at the moment, Jason. But you know, we all were talking about the women. He also has all the men just also running circles around him, and not in like a sexual way, but in I mean, I guess someone could, but or is it? Yeah. It was the 60s. It was Italy. Ciao. But so yeah.
Well, he's the captain of the ship. He's the director. He's the celebrity.
Right. And it seemed like he only had one mistress. I mean, maybe before he had other ones, but he clearly was interested in the other actresses, but never knowing whether or not it was going to turn into sexual or just that, not admiration, but the, you know, kind of the putting up on a pedestal or being put up on a pedestal. And maybe that's why he, you know, the ambiguity of everything that he had, because he was kind of also into the whole everyone's after me, everybody wants me type of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's definitely a celebrity and he's sought after, and he's got people hanging all over him for many reasons. Some just want a part in the movie. Some just want a line in the movie, you know? And so what are people willing to do to be celebrity adjacent? And what are people willing to do to get access to, like, you know, a role in a major director's film? You know, so yeah, I think women are throwing themselves at him, and throughout his life, he's probably taking advantage. Well, clearly he's taking advantage of it. In the film, he only has one mistress, sure, but his wife, you know, alludes that he's been cheating, and you know he's been cheating. All these women in the movie either love him, are infatuated by him, or want something from him, and he's using all of that to his advantage. And then also, like, same thing for the men. Like, you know, they're spending money on him and giving him what he needs because, like, the producers need him to make more money. And everybody sort of like either like wants to work for him or wants to be in his film, like as far as the men go as well. And plus he's, like, again, celebrity adjacent. You know, I thought that one of the more interesting relationships he had actually was him and the magician. Because, like, after all that, we found out they knew each other. They were like old friends, which is funny.
So there's
but
that.
Let me say the thing. I really like Guido. I agree with you guys. He's super cool. Like, the whole time he's walking and sort of dancing and sort of like, you know, strutting and like living his life. I'm like, man, like, this dude's having so much fun, and he looks great doing it. He's got the coolest sunglasses and the coolest clothes. and like it's like this sophisticated simplicity about him, you know, and like it's just he just feels like very like in charge of his own sort of his own
Swagger.
world. Yeah, his
Oh
own
yeah.
swag in his own world. Like, and it's just like, yeah, it's great casting. They really cast and I guess Fellini cast what's his name? What's his Marcello? What is that his name? Mercy.
Marcello
I
Mastroianni.
think so.
Yeah, the actor is Marcello. So yeah, Fellini cast him. I looked it up. He cast him in a bunch of his movies, and well, so he's a great actor. He's fantastic. He's really easy to watch. You know, he's handsome. He's charismatic. You know, he moves well. He's a movie star. Honestly, he's an Italian film star. Uh, my favorite character though is Lucia, the wife, because I think she kind of has the hardest weight. Her and the mistress have the hardest weight to lift in this thing, you know, besides him. Like they're dealing with the most emotional stuff. And she's like, she loves this man, but she's had enough of him. She knows who he is, you know, through and through. He's not getting anything past her, but yet he keeps trying. He can't even help but lie. And it's almost this modern take about like manipulation and gaslighting. It's like nothing's really changed in the relationship between men and women. Like we're still doing this to one another. Men are still doing this to women. And he's using all these like advantages of like having this power and this fame and this money to really do her like this. And in his fantasy, he gets to have all the women around him. Like so he either loves that they all love him or he actually loves them. I don't know. But he loves having them around. And in his perfect world, he gets to keep everybody. And they all go along with it.
And the time that he almost seemed the most interested in his wife again was when it looked like she was maybe having an affair or was about to have an affair with a guy that clearly came with and was, I guess, in love or infatuated with her. And in that sense, she's one of the best well-defined characters as a whole in the movie because she's even like, as much as I want to or whatever, I could never come around to cheating or something right along the lines of that. And I was like, that is so powerful I feel like of a line and the delivery of her to be able to say that of like knowing that she even has the option and has, you know, clearly someone that she might be willing to cheat with, but
She
just
didn't have it
can't
in her,
do it.
for
Oh,
sure. What do you guys you guys
Not cheating. Not being a faithful.
I said, is it powerful or is she a sucker? But no, go ahead.
I mean, maybe she is, maybe she isn't. But if it's not in her, you know, wheelhouse to cheat, if it's not in her character, I mean, to cheat, then yeah, it's just very honest. Like she like, even if I wanted to cheat on you, I'm not gonna cheat because I'm not a cheater.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't I
Yeah.
physically can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it because it wouldn't make me feel good to do it. You know, even though he deserved it, right? But she wasn't trying to get back at him. It just she was being honest about herself, you
Right.
know, which is like really great script writing. A lot of the dialogue in this movie is really great too. Like the conversations are back and forth, they're fast, it's good acting, but it's like the things that they're talking about are so mundane, but also so important at the same time. It's just like these regular conversations that we just sort of like have while we're at work, because mostly they're at work in this film. You know, they're in pre-production for this film, and they're just having these conversations. And it kind of reminded me of Seinfeld because they kept saying like, "Yeah, but the story you wrote is it's about nothing. It's a story about nothing. You want to make movies about nothing." You know, and like you're good at making stories about nothing. And that's what this movie is kind of about, right? It's about a lot, but a lot of nothing happens to get to the a lot. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I was gonna say though, this might be non sequitur. I don't think it is, but if I hadn't have known that you had already watched this film, Jason, I would have been like, someone else in their film might have taken something from this film of just the idea. Because then when they are seeing the read throughs, the auditions, basically the screen test, it's basically him and his wife's arguments and situations. And I don't know, it reminds me a lot of a film we watched not recently.
Yeah,
Along came a
you're that.
callback, I
I thought
believe
the
it
same
was,
thing, honestly. I thought the
and
same
you're
thing
like,
because
I'm Fellini.
I am a Fellini. Uh, so yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I thought the same thing. I thought it briefly during that scene, but it really popped out to me because in the movie that I wrote, it is about me. And I mean, I don't know if I ever told you guys this when we talked about it, but the film is ultimately about me and all the women in my life, right? And all the all the like arguments that I have in that movie are real arguments that I've had with different women throughout my life. And
Ooh.
so when Fellini does this thing, I'm like, is this Fellini? Like, is this meta? Is this really Fellini's life? And you would think it would have to be, right?
I would think so, at least parts of it, and then maybe it's gone elsewhere. But definitely, there's got to be certain things like those kind of arguments. And I would imagine Fellini was, I mean, he was hanging out with all these different artists, right? Like his contemporary
Yeah,
or contemporaries. I don't know, either one,
contemporaries.
whatever you
Yeah.
choose. But yeah, so he was hanging out with painters and everyone. I feel like Salvador Dali, maybe even, and so I could imagine they were just kind of players as well, right? Like,
Yep.
let
Picasso.
b- boys will be boys, right? Type of a scenario. Like, so I can totally see that these are kind of situations that he has been in, multiple times.
But
Whether
isn't that
whether
weird that if he's going through this movie, right? Like, I mean, like if physically in his life, this is like similar to his own setup, then he makes a movie about a director who's going through the process of making a movie with all these like personalities and women around him and him like trying to balance that. It's
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 like
like three levels deep.
a book.
what'd you say?
I said it's like a
I,
book about a book about a book about a book.
that's exactly what
Yeah,
it's
basically.
Inception.
Also, bringing Inception, his friend. I don't know. Was he the producer, the older guy that was with the younger girl who might have been American, that was maybe
Uh,
wanting to be an actress?
was he one of the
The
producers or was he a
Yeah,
friend?
the older guy, older
Yeah,
friend, but
I know who you're
a
talking
little.
about. I don't know if I guess he was one of the producers. I'm not sure.
Just because at the very end it seemed like he was the producer. I think he was like, well, it was time to end. But I like the fact, they talk about 20, oh, no, I know what it was. Sorry. I don't know why I said that. But in his one dream sequence with all the women in his life, and then they're pushing the one woman up because she's now 26. I'm like, what is this? Leonardo DiCaprio?
Same.
Like,
No, she wasn't 26. She was lying.
well, I
But
know, but still,
either way, it
but the
reminds you of that.
rule was if you were 26 or older, that's where you had to go. They
Oh,
said
was
the
it
rule.
26? I thought it
Yeah.
was
That's
like
what they
70.
said. That's what they said. The rule was 26, but clearly there were other women down there that were, I would imagine, older than 26.
There was probably only
But
two women there that were 26 or younger.
But
I know,
back
but
then they used whatever actresses they had. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, so I think they were alluding to that. But no, I thought the exact same thing because they say he won't date anybody after they turn 25.
25.
Or I was like, did he
He,
get inspired by this?
yeah. Maybe he's dated, I think, one that's gone over 26, but it was like right when he was that age, and since then, yeah.
So
Anyway,
here's a,
that
here's a relationship that I really liked in the movie. I'm going to tell you why I liked it because it's really sophisticated writing, directing, and acting. It was the character, the wife, or the soon to be divorced wife of the producer. She clearly has a crush on Guido, and she keeps trying to like get next to him and talk to him and be cute or whatever. And I think even one point she mentions that she's an actress or whatever, but she's not. And she's like, "Well, I wouldn't mind a part in your flick." And at some point, like he's just completely ignoring her, like you're off limits. and she's still throwing herself at him. And then the husband is trying to win her back over the entire movie. And it would seem as though he does win her back over, and she sort of goes, okay, I give up on Guido. But if you watch in the background of a lot of scenes, she's staring at him, and she's fixated on him. The camera doesn't focus on it. She's just sort of like tableaued in the background, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful because it's like there's a whole nother life happening where the camera is not directed at, and every actor knows their part. It's like a play. It was so cool.
So another, I get going character-wise, I guess there's one character we haven't talked about, which is location. Because the location, and not only Iñárritu, pero Pedro Almodóvar, he had that movie that was a little biopic as well, where Antonio Banderas played him as a director as well, and it was flashbacks with him as a little kid. And it reminded me of the flashbacks in this movie as a little kid as well. But
do you remember the name of that movie?
Yeah, I can tell you in a second. But the locations, especially the one that blew my mind, was when he was a little kid. The confession booth that they had were amazing. Just the wood and like the kind of like, it almost felt like a radio that I guess was like transmitting to God and the heavens or whatever, right? It felt like something that you would maybe see in Star Trek or Star Wars or any, because just the workmanship in that kind of, and the elegance. But that was with a lot of different, like as simple as the Hotel de Ponte or whatever, because then I was like, I looked it up and I think it's called Hotel de Ponte. They're outside and the light turns on, the that you see in the background, and then little by little each light starts turning on. And that's for like a black and white film, and it looks so clear. It comes out really well. So the choices of location to me definitely were as well its own little kind of character.
Yeah, a lot of the locations were really cool, man. There's a couple that really stuck out to me. The one where they sort of drive into the, like, I guess like a dark alley sort of thing, and they start having that conversation. Like, I thought that was incredible. It's so simple, but it was unique, and they were kind of away from everybody for a minute, and they were able to have like this real conversation. Like, I thought that was super dope, and it's simple, but also like that big space. That's impossible to light. You know what I mean? That's impossible to light. And they figured out how to do it, and it looks beautiful.
When they were, I think it's in that alley with the most French car ever. I feel like Les Samurai had the same freaking. It's a little, not a whatever, like a little half an egg or whatever.
Yeah.
That like they were able to light her perfectly, and he's just like in the shadow. And I'm like,
so cool.
The movie, Pedro Almodóvar movie is called Pain and Glory. That
you guys watched that one, didn't you?
Yeah, you watched. Were you not in that one? Maybe?
I think I missed that week.
Oh, okay. But yeah. So, and it's similar, and that one, what reminds, even though there aren't any black and white scenes, there are a lot of flashbacks to him as a kid, and like dealing with that kind of stuff and situations. And I think, Anyway, so clearly he affected a lot of filmmakers, and still does probably.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how he couldn't. I feel like anybody who makes film, who watches this, they're going to take something from it. Because like, even though like a lot of the movie is incoherent at first, there's a lot to learn about it. Just even like, and it's very stylized. Like, I want to watch a bunch more Fellini movies. Like, this one didn't completely win me over, but you see the skill and the craftsmanship in this, where it's like, let me see what else this guy did. I know he did La Strada, which is also on my list. What are some of the other films that Fellini has done?
But it's almost like for him, it's more of an art piece than a film at times. I feel like, I don't know if that makes sense, because it's almost more like
it feels like it does. It feels almost a little experimental, but not everybody can pull this off. Like I would say 99% of directors can't pull this off. And I've seen others try to do it. You know, I've seen Robert Altman. This is his whole style. Robert Altman's entire filmmaking style is this. And I think he discovered it, knowing a little bit about Altman, I feel like he discovered it not maybe by watching this. I think he discovered his style by accident. But this is like that moving camera with lots of actors happening and stuff happening in the background and entire lives and scenes happening and everybody staying in full character. There's this, okay, and he has this joke. It's this running bit in the movie. I don't know if you guys noticed it because it's very small. When the mistress is sitting down at the table, somebody goes, hey, somebody has to save her because that old man keeps messing with her and is asking her to dance. And I had to rewind it 3 times because the old man has a drink and he keeps trying to get her attention. He keeps like hoisting the drink up at her and she's like looking away. Like, I can't make eye contact with this old man or else he's going to come over here. I'm like, that is so real. 1963 Italy is no different than any other place in the world at any other time for women. Like, this guy is relentless. He has to secretly send one of his guys over there to dance with her to get her away from this old man. Again, in the movie later on, there's another scene near the end, but they kind of do a callback where there's another old man, and it's like kind of the circus scene or whatever. There's another old man, and he's like trying to get somebody's attention in the background, and he's doing the same thing. And it's like, this is like, it's relentless. This movie is like being in a fist fight, and someone's just punching you up against the wall, and they won't stop. It doesn't let up.
And
if it wasn't so hard to watch, like, it feels like a longer movie than 2 hours, but it's one like I'm sure you can watch over and over and over and find so many other things in the background. But what I would say, almost more so than watching it again, well, I guess this could at some point be part of the final thoughts, but behind the scenes, like if there's any footage behind the scenes, kind of like there's footage in color of the Great Dictator behind the scenes, right? Of Charlie Chaplin setting up scenes and just kind of like on the camera and all that. Because it's like there is no shaky cam, but there's so much movement. It's like, what wheels are you on this that you're able? Like, are you on one wheel? Like, the amount of control they have of this camera and moving around, and then he gets the megaphone, and it's just like, and with the lighting again, like everything is lit, and it's not, So
and you're not seeing any lights, and the camera's moving and turning, and and the lights aren't moving. It's impressive. Yeah.
So I definitely would. That's probably what I would look after at some point we get done, either today or tomorrow. It's just kind of like, all right, is there behind the scenes footage? Or
I was thinking that the whole time I was watching this movie, man. I was thinking like, man, I need to go to the Criterion thing and see if there's any interviews. Because like I need to know how this thing was made, or at least conceptualized. Because in this movie, go ahead.
No, or if they're just interviews with the performers or whatever, like the Criterion channel normally has that. But
so what I found kind of interesting about the story is that I guess I don't know if it's the B. I don't even know what the A or B story is in this thing, to be honest with you, because there's so much happening. But the thing that I found pretty interesting was, I guess because, as a filmmaker, I was wondering how. So they're making this movie. And the script isn't done yet, and he still has like his script writing partner or whatever kind of giving him notes like this thing isn't right.
There is no script.
There's no script at all?
No.
No, I think there is, because the script writing partner is telling him in the beginning.
I think that's a separate one. Anyway, that, because remember, he throws the notes away and then they keep wanting. Anyway, go on. Maybe I misunderstood.
He gives him but he gave him notes for the movie. So how could he give him notes for the movie if there was no script?
Because there was ideas. Anyway, point being, I think he decides not. The way I saw it was there wasn't actually a script. That was like a separate thing that they were maybe gonna try and do, and then it fell apart because the guy was even like, "Why do you even want to work with me? I don't kind of almost like I don't like, you know, we're too different." But I
Yeah.
totally derailed you. So
So the idea is that they're in pre-production and they say they only have 2 weeks before they begin shooting. So all this is sort of happening. Everybody's doing their job and costume people are working and casting is doing this thing and locations are popping up and the producers are trying to figure out like, well, what movie are we making exactly? And you know, I know like sometimes in like the movie system in Hollywood and whatnot, when the money's on the table, you just have to go. And finding out that there's a lot of scripts that start production that aren't fully fleshed out and aren't fully done, and they're just sort of figuring it out on the go. And to me, that's crazy, and it's probably the reason why so many movies fail, because it's like the producers are like, all right, ready to make a movie, I got money, let's do it. And as a filmmaker, you're like, well, even though it's not done, the money doesn't come every day. I got to start making this thing while the money's available before it dries up or before they give it to someone else or take it to invest it somewhere else. So let's get started with this movie. We'll figure out the script as we go. We'll figure out casting. Like they didn't have a cast because they didn't know who to cast or what to cast.
and then that's kind of like in Hollywood. Some of the greatest movies are ones that couldn't be that won't pick up for like 8 or 10. Kind of like an example is Back to the Future. Like no one was picking it up, so they just did rewrites and did rewrites and were fleshing things out and just kind of fleshing things out. And then once they finally got it made, like it turned into this huge phenomenon, a freaking trilogy. So that's a good point of just like usually it's like we kind of have a script with a interesting idea. I have the money. We got a star tied to it. Let's go. And it's like,
Yeah. And in this movie, which probably happens in real life, the star wants to work with the director, and the agent is like, yeah, I want you to work with this director, but we have other offers on the table. You have to tell her what it's about so we can
yeah.
make a decision. And I'm sure stars are left hanging like that all the time. Like, yeah, I would love to work for you, but what is it? you know?
And he's like, "Oh, you're almost there. You're almost there." It's like, what a dick! Like it's
So
like,
excited for
you know,
those few English sentences. I was like, what did you say? When they were at the table with
yeah,
the American. I was like, yay.
And the assistant, she was also American.
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I was kind of like, I had looked away and I started hearing, this is for real. I looked away and I was hearing like English and I was like, wait, am I starting to understand Italian?
That's kind of what I was thinking too. I was like, wait a minute now, but I was like, oh yeah, that was English.
Yeah, it took me a second.
Yeah, man.
Okay. Well, I think we covered about as much as we can cover in this thing. I mean, unless
That
you
we
guys,
can understand.
I mean, so here's the thing about understanding the movie. I would say that the movie feels, when it gets started, it feels like it's going to be very intimidating and hard to grasp, and it's going to be like too artsy and over my head and too interpretational, if that means anything, if that's like a word. Like it's going to be too much to be interpreted. But then the movie like grounds itself when we start talking about like his relationships to everybody. And then it's like, okay, now I can really wrap my head around this thing, who these people are, who he is because of his past experiences and what made him like this. And he's really a kid. He's kind of a kid in a candy shop. He's very childish. He has everybody sort of like, he's sort of the center of everybody's universe and he loves it, you know. But I also feel like he's the kind of guy that he would make the best out of any situation because he's so playful. But maybe he's only playful because he has like, I don't know, he's just charming. He's charming, but he's also kind of mean too. And he's kind of like mischievous.
Oh yeah.
Like I didn't like when he was telling those guys to dance for a part. And then they do their stupid little dance to get a part. And then he goes, "Get out of here. Get out of my face with that." Like, it's like, it's real, but it also like, it's like, man, like it's almost a little too real.
He's a little bit of a narcissist, and there's
Well,
narcissists that have fun
Yeah.
personalities. So,
I,
just
also I was like, are there gonna be any black people in this movie? And then there was one. I
I
was
did
like,
not consider it. I didn't think there were going to be any black people in 1960s Italy, even though there are and were. Like
right.
I didn't see it coming, and then there was. I was like, oh, that's pleasant. I was like, they better not do no racist mess. This better be above board, Fellini.
it
And it
wasn't
wasn't.
racist, but it was weird. Like, why was she from Hawaii and why was she dancing
Oh,
around?
did they say Hawaii? I didn't even. I don't remember that.
I
But
thought that was weird, but I was like, I'm okay with it. Hawaii's the U.S., and there's got to be black people in Hawaii.
He said, "Who's that
and
girl over there?"
But listen, why wouldn't the Hawaiian girl end up in Italy?
in
I
his
don't know.
dream
They just
sequence,
said they found her. Like, it was just like it was
we
strange.
found. Yeah, we brought you this exotic thing, and that's where I was a little worried. Like, oh no,
Oh boy.
They
like,
did, they
and
did it
don't
okay, but still.
and don't be the first girl that's completely nude, because they definitely played with it, and I was like, oh, clearly it's not a French film, or we'd be seeing stuff. But
That's interesting. You're right. There was no for all these women being in a movie that's like sort of like hypersexualized, but not really ever spoken or visualized. There's no nudity.
Yeah, a lot of
armpit hair.
I know. I did see that. It reminded me I need like to shave. Like, I was like, ooh.
Oh, that's
And
what I got.
I don't
Yeah.
even know what the fashion was back then, like, because it wasn't like I don't know if you're talking about Claudia's in that one scene, but um, it wasn't like a lot. So I'm curious what the
No,
grooming was like back then. Like, how did they remove anything if they did? Because I feel like a razor is such an when were razors invented? I don't even know.
clip.
I don't think shaving was a thing like that was on trend
No.
yet.
Okay, because she didn't have enough to where I feel like she's been growing it out her whole life.
And
But
it could just, if she's younger or something, I don't know, right? Depending on
maybe
the
this is
age or body types, maybe, but
I would imagine actresses probably did though.
okay.
maybe a little bit at the very least. So, yeah.
I've seen very few films where an actress had like armpit hair or whatever, like hair, and it not be like on purpose to make a point.
Mm.
Okay, so before we go to final thoughts, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the costumes in this movie because the fashion is basically a character in this thing. And everybody has their own style, and it's Italian and it's cool, and it's like, man, like Italians can dress their asses off.
So a couple that come to mind is him as an adult, and when they everybody would like drape stuff over themselves, like their coats, not even put like their arms, and I was like, that's so cool. But also whatever he was wearing as a little kid, which was also like a cape, and just I'm like, this is sick. Like this is so cool looking. Like even for a kid, I'm like, I've never as a kid was I ever that stylish, right? Like I don't
Right.
know. I mean, clearly they went to like a Catholic school, all boys school, or whatever. But then again, in that weird alley thing, when it was him and the girl and the lighting, and she's like sitting on the doorstep and is like crouched over and has like that feathery black
Mm.
feathery thing, and all you can see is that glowing light with the feather overcoat and maybe her knees and her head. And it's, to me, I was like, that is beautiful. That's a beautiful shot right there. And that caught, like, I was I was so impressed. I was like, it's beautiful. And there were definitely other costumes that were also like that. But that's the one that really, you know, clicked.
So here's a weird standout costume to me, and it's probably you guys will probably never guess it, but it's the one that Lucia wears in the dream sequence with all the women in the house.
Yes.
It's very basic. It's almost like peasant-esque, and she's just like cleaning up after everybody. She's like the caretaker for everyone in the house. Like that's her role. But for whatever reason in that scene, she's the most beautiful person in the whole movie in that scene. She's gorgeous.
Yeah, she was washing the floor. And Marina, I thought you were like, she's cleaning up after everyone else, and I
Oh
thought you
no, I
did
was
like,
like literally scratching my head.
no, Marina
Like,
did a little thing
Oh,
like that, and I was like, okay, Marina, yeah. But I guess you also just had a
no,
little.
I'm not cleaning up after everybody in any house.
isn't it insane? There was like 13 women living there, and she was the only one doing all the work for the house.
And that's
But
his fantasy.
is that because of what she had said, right? That she, no matter what, wouldn't necessarily cheat on him, so she would always kind of be there. Or that's
Yeah.
how he also envisioned her. Like, she's kind of my anchor, regardless whatever else I do. That's
But also remember, he wasn't sleeping with all these women. Like the newspaper reporter,
no,
or I mean, the magazine writer, she was clearly flirting with him, but he wasn't trying
yeah,
to sleep with her. But she's
no, no, no,
also
no,
in the
no.
fantasy.
Well,
Maybe,
I mean, they were all in it.
maybe the fantasy is that they were all his. Maybe it's like a play on
They were
was
all
it
hit. You're right.
maybe what's it called when you're married to multiple people?
Polygamy.
And maybe it's a
Mormon.
like maybe that was no. Well, maybe it's a play on what he would want, and he sometimes people, not just men, like people don't believe in one person. They don't believe you can get everything that you want in one person. So they want a variety. So for him, a wife, that's what a wife does. That's what a showgirl does. That's what like the promiscuous girl does. That's what the businesswoman does. Like maybe in his mind, he'll never love just one person. Like he needs all kinds of people in
And
his life.
it's not, again, like a sexual love or want, but just a collection of, like, these women have meant something to me or interest me in one way that, I don't want to let go, kind of.
Yeah. He wants his cake and his pie and his pizza and eat it too.
If,
And his empanada.
And
if
his
I want my cake and to be able to eat it too as a person,
yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely Guido.
yeah.
Other standout costumes, obviously, Claudia, that's the mistress, right? She, yeah, her costumes. I mean, she makes reference to all her pieces. Like, yeah, I brought all these pretty dresses, and I'm about to wear them.
It's hard for me to find it. Yeah.
Yeah, what you say?
She was like, "This was on the Vogue magazine. It was so hard for me to find it."
Yeah. So yeah, there was that, and then also like the goth chick, the little dark girl who had a little crush on him for a minute. The producer's wife, I guess, soon to be divorced wife. Like I liked her style too because she just seems sort of like gothy and a little spooky, but also like she had that college student philosophy class vibe. But like her fashion was dope and her makeup was dope and her hair. And then like again, Lucia, like everything she wore was super understated and simple and elegant and beautiful. And I love that because that's who
Yeah.
she was. So it was really great costuming for her.
I love to hear up on a lot of the characters, even though like yeah, some of the dresses were great, but I love a good hat. And it was just so interesting seeing the makeup of the time too. Just very different brows. They're
Oh
very different.
yeah,
It was yeah, it was pretty cool. I think the first hat we see Claudia in has like the spots on it and stuff. I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
she had a mole at first, but I realized it was a part.
And it was the kind of the drape,
I love
whatever.
that. I thought it was fantastic.
I do miss that in fashion. Like nowadays, you only do that like if you're a celebrity going
At
to an
the
award.
at the Met
Yeah,
Gala.
Or church or something, right? Like old school church. But so it's funny you mentioned that. When I was watching that, I'm like, why hasn't that come back yet? That feels like that's like right on the verge of about to happen. Women are going to wear the hats with the lace and the little spots on them, and I mean, and there's so many more designs we can do now because of like how fashion has evolved. I just feel like that hat, mark my words, mark it, within the next 5 years, maybe less, maybe two, that hat is coming back. That style is coming back.
it'd
That
be
you
great
can
for if you don't want to do your hair. Like I need that sometimes. 'Cause I do that with caps now. Like oh, a cap. So just
Put
have
um
that
a
hat
nice
on. Yeah.
well, I mean, that's what, right? Every guy basically is just like, I
It's
need
the
a
But we're
haircut.
also a point in fashion now where it's wide open. Like there is no like, oh, that's not fashionable. Everything is fashionable right now. Like you can get away with anything.
I thought headgear was coming back when heavy, because there are still people that wear some, like we say the cap. There's also the one that's like a little bit more out, but still cappy. But when the lady who kind of exposed one of the NFL owners, remember when she was trying to hide, she wore like the visor that like covered her whole head, and that almost made a comeback. Like that almost, I don't even know if that was ever a thing, but that almost was trendy. It wasn't too much, but I was like, ooh, we're getting back into headgear, like, but it didn't last that long.
Well, the big hats and those kind of things, Jason, I was like, you can see that at the horse races and stuff like that. So it's clearly, I feel like, when you're at a level of, society,
Yeah,
it's there already.
it would just be nice to see a more casual version or a
Yeah,
French
for us
version.
commoners,
Yeah.
maybe we'll bring it back in the next 2 years.
I mean, I feel like for hats for women, those hats are only going to work if like the woman is dressed up in a dress or something. Like, I mean, usually that's when women wear hats. Like, women don't really, I mean, caps and all that kind of stuff, right? But
Yeah.
when women wear brims and like pillbox hats or like fashionable hats, it's always dressy.
Yeah,
So
funeral.
I guess we got to bring back dress clothes and pencil skirts and stuff first. I don't
Yeah.
know. We
Maybe,
got to do it.
We're women in working now. We're working nowadays, so sometimes we need pants.
And
For
then
fact.
his hat was interesting because then it had like the side was up, but it was like a kind of dress. It wasn't like a cowboy hat. It was kind of
They
dress
made fun
hat,
of him
and
for that
then
hat too. They said it was an old man hat.
yeah, and then I almost like it would have been Napoleon if he were wearing it the other way and it was up.
It was being worn, like the hat was getting wear throughout the
Yeah.
film because it was changing. It had different bends in it throughout the film.
And was he going wider? Because I feel like his hair started getting grayer and whiter, and at the very end, it was as silvery as it had been.
I think
So
that was hair dye, so it was probably changing as they were shooting the film. It was probably like the
right.
spray on stuff.
Yeah. I'm not. I mean, I'm not saying him as the actor, but the character started going wider and wider, right?
Uh, I didn't
Not
notice
sure.
that. I did notice the back of his hair seemed more gray than the front.
Yeah. Okay.
Like when he was in the steam shower, I definitely noticed that. Um, but I mean, yeah, I guess I didn't. It's probably it's probably just inconsistencies. I would imagine. I'm guessing he could have been going grayer. I mean, maybe that was part of the. I don't know.
The stress.
He was being stressed out, but I feel like he was just stressing everybody else out. He seemed like he was doing okay. Everybody else had the problem.
Louise should have been going gray. Louisa.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, of course. I mean, she definitely was. Also, okay, so here's a scene. What happened before she gets into the car with them when she first shows up on set or whatever, or and they're having their little powwow, and she kind of shows up a little bit unexpectedly, and then she has an attitude, like she finds out. Did the fortune teller tell her what was happening? Because they never really like show why she gets mad. We just know like she realizes like, man, this guy's full of it. Same old.
Yeah. I didn't notice how she clocked it, other than she just knows. She knew.
She was just standing there. He looked at her, and she was standing there, and you could just see her disposition change. But I know she they had mentioned the fortune teller before that. Like, yeah, go talk to the fortune teller. She knows everything.
Yeah, I didn't catch it other than her kind of just knowing.
So what I saw was there's the fortune teller. I mean, there's her, right? And Guido notices her, and then they do like this. What do you call it when they not a pan, but when the focus, they change focus, and then the focus is on the fortune teller, and she's right in the foreground of the film, and we see her profile, and she's like smoking a cigarette, and then that's it, and then like she has an attitude. So I just assume like even though they didn't show her talk to the fortune teller, and the fortune teller's not even next to her, the fortune teller's in the foreground. But that's kind of like, and then the camera pans away. But that's kind of the surreal nature that this movie sort of plays with.
Yeah, for sure. But I didn't catch it.
Yeah, I didn't either. But
yeah, it's one of I rewound it like 3 times because I kept looking for the moment where she realizes that Guido's up to his shit again. All right, well, let's go into our final thoughts, guys.
Okay. Let me say it so I can get out of here, and then I won't interrupt people anymore. My final thought is kind of a mix of everything we've seen it. I recommend this movie to everyone because I saw it, and so should everyone else. I'm not going to be the only one seeing this movie, and there's so many great things about it. And Fellini is one of the most talked about directors of cinema and everything. So if you're interested in film, this is one of those movies that you should watch because it can change the way you look at things. That being said, can imagine we've talked too long about this movie, so we aren't here. But we never at once, and I forgot because again, there's so much to talk about. We didn't even mention him who gives him the gun, and then he shoots himself in the mirror scene, and then he shoots himself, and it's like, oh shit, is that also in his mind? Is that reality? And then all that. So we didn't even get to that. So there's so much to discuss, and how do you look at things and everything. So yeah, I'd recommend it to everyone because who's into film specifically, and then especially if you're into surreal stuff. So that's my final thought. Dino out.
Okay, thanks, Dino. Marina, if you don't mind, I'll go next.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, go ahead.
just, just because I'll keep it really short. I agree with everything Dino said. I would recommend this thing to people who love film. I feel like if you love film, you consider yourself a cinephile, you probably have to watch this thing, even if you watch it begrudgingly. I think you'll enjoy it. I just think you got to get past that first 6 minutes of what is happening. Most of this film feels like a fever dream, but once you get past that first 6, 7 minute intro, I think you're kind of, well, not even that much. I think maybe the first 20 minutes of this thing, really, before you find out like what's actually happening because it's so fast paced. But yeah, I can't recommend it to everybody because some people will hate my guts, like, Jason, what did you do? But anybody who loves film,
Like the rest of Cinema Club that didn't join us today.
yeah, the rest
And
of
some,
Cinema Club should watch it. I think they should. Um, would I see it again? Yeah, I'm probably going to see this thing again. I'm probably going to see it more than one more time, at least for not even just for reference. I mean, like this is like I said, or when I first started, this is a master's work. Like not any, just not that any director off the street can pull this off. This is a very challenging movie to pull off, and it's all over the place, and a lot of it doesn't make any sense. But I think that's the point of it. Like he's trying to make sense of his own life and his own work and this own very specific piece, which he's like integrating into his life. So the whole thing's very confusing to him and thus confusing to us. But the director, Fellini, knows exactly what he's doing. And Fellini could have did any movie probably at this point, and he chose to do something as challenging as this. With his ability to tell this kind of story, you know he can tell just a standard narrative like on his head probably. Because like this thing is just all over the place and he makes it work.
Marvel movie. Imagine Fellini doing a movie. Like, yeah, I could do a Marvel movie.
I think Fellini could do a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
he could have done this last. Oh, that wasn't Marvel. It was DC. I was gonna think he'd done this Flash with all the
Yeah.
back and
Oh man.
But that's my final thought. Marina.
Yeah.
My final thoughts are, Jason, you keep me classy. You know, this is why you need friends. You need friends that are different than you because I would never have heard of this. I never would have watched it. Now I can be in social groups and be like, yeah, you know, I watched one of Fellini's first films. You know, you could just be all spiffy. But recommendation wise, I agree. Just people who really are into where the art started. And there was just a lot of camera tricks and lighting tricks that were way ahead of its time. So I would definitely recommend it to someone who's super into that or they're in school for cinematography. Probably never watch it again just because I just can't with black and white. Sometimes again, I don't mind watching it for the learning aspect, but I like to watch TV mostly for entertainment. So it has to be something.
Damn, Marina just said this was not entertaining.
It was just hard. I have an attention disorder, guys. Like I literally had to like slap myself, like focus, all right, focus on this. You
I
got
mean,
her.
I think that's fair, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's, yeah, I think the average person is going to have those feelings. You know, I would call myself an expert film watcher at this point, and I struggle with it. It's the first thing I said.
Yeah.
So I get it.
It was a struggle.
But I
Yeah.
appreciate
Anything?
and
Yeah.
learning about new things. So thank you for recommending
So
it.
I'm going to also suggest, only because they're on my list, other Fellini films. La Dolce Vita. I'm sure you guys have all heard of that, probably. La Strada, Knights of Cabrera, and Europe 51. Those are all on my list of Fellini films I like to get to. So
Marina's just
that leaves me.
nodding. It's like,
I'll let you know. I'll let you know when I do, Jason.
I'm assuming that the rest of his work is not as surreal and wild as this one, and that's what I don't know. This is my first Fellini film, so we'll see. But that's what I imagine. But this is his. I think this is his most popular piece, probably for good reason. You know, like we said earlier, this has been stolen and inspiring lots of filmmakers that are still making movies up until like a few months ago, right? So
yep.
I guess I just have one last question. Steve, what do you got for us next week?
I don't know why you're asking Steve because he's not even here at the moment. And it's Marina's turn.
Yay. So y'all know me. I gotta keep it. I gotta
Still
keep
same
us.
OG.
Huh? Oh yeah. Just trying to provide the groceries for my family and all that. But I have to keep it girly, so I'm picking Little Women.
Oh,
The 1994 version. Love
nice.
this movie. Has a lot of actors that you wouldn't know all work together. So I'm excited.
Very cool. Looking forward to it. Never seen it.
All right. Well, that's Cinema Club, guys, for Marina, Jason, and myself. See y'all later. Bye. Everybody, bye, bye, bye.